Hey, everybody, and welcome to the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ and Addison here as always, and we are ready to keep moving forward. That's what, if you've ever seen the beautifully underrated Meet the Robinsons Disney movie, that is what they constantly say, because that was Walt Disney's quote himself. But keep moving forward. That's what you got to keep doing. If you are like us and have no patience, are just a fantasy football degenerate, or what other way you want to describe us and probably you're done with your 2024 rookie drafts already. Our Watcher League is on like the last 5 picks, so we're pretty much done. I have one that started today, and that is a league that purposefully waits until June every single year. So we're going to go on this show assuming you've had your 24 drafts already, because what we're going to be talking about are 2025 picks. And the reason it's a little important to assume that your 24 drafts are done already is because like 5-6 weeks ago, we did a show about ignoring your 24 draft to go to 25, which is a very different situation than when your 24 drafts are over with. Because people, like I started to say at the beginning, people are moving forward. They've moved on. 24 is over and done with. They don't care anymore. Players are on teams. So 25 is the next draft, and that's the one in their sights. So these picks have gained a little value because those 24 picks are gone. So what we're going to do, as always, is use the DLF trade. What Addison did was use the DLF trade finder to look for some real life trades made using 25 first, put them in the trade analyzer, and then we'll go over what they were. And it looks like Addison broke them up by position, pick for position. First, we have quarterbacks in 12-team Superflex. Ooh, okay. Zay Flowers, a 25 first and second for Jared Goff and Travis Kelce. Zay Flowers, 289, a 25 first, 275. The second is 88 for a total of 652. Jared Goff, 436. Travis Kelce, 254.2. Total of 690. I think we can simplify this a little bit. Especially even in the analyzer, Travis Kelce is worth either a 25 first or Zay Flowers. And I feel like both of those are relatively realistic. I'm going to say Zay Flowers for Travis Kelce absolutely happened. You have a rebuilding versus a competing team. The competing team wants those tight end points. The rebuilding team wants that young wide receiver. I'm going to cross those out. So this is Jared Goff for a first and a second. And I would love to get Jared first. Nice. I would love to get Jared Goff for just a first. But if I have to add a second, I guess I would, especially after we were like Jalen Hurtsing Jared Goff a little bit. Like he's going to get replaced. He's going to, they're going to get replaced. It doesn't matter. They'll grab a quarterback at the end of the first, and Goff will be nope. They extended him. He's there. He's the deal. He's their quarterback. So I'm fine if it takes to throw in a second to get someone that is a little bit more long-term. And Goff is a little bit more like a more exciting Cousins, kind of. Where Cousins seems boring, but still scores pretty well. Jared Goff at least is on what feels like a more exciting offense, and
yes,
at least we're not as bored of him as we are of Cousins already. But they still feel like very similar priced based on their age, because there's a 6 or 7 year age difference between the two.
Yep.
But their prices are almost pretty even, again, giving that age difference. So. And I would give up a 25 first for Cousins at this point. So I feel like the value of this is fine. And again, trading for a quarterback without giving one up means giving the first and second instead. So I'm actually very cool with this and love getting the points for this. But if I'm rebuilding, I also don't hate this. This is a very fair trade in every way I tried to break it up. So I think they got, again, I hate not having a real answer and having to say it depends what the position your team is in. But this trade is really good.
It's a phenomenal deal. And I mean, this show, I think is not so much about you should be trying to trade away your 2025 first. You should be trying to trade for your 2025 firsts. It's more just to kind of set the price on what things kind of look like, ideas that you could use if you're looking to trade away your first to compete, if you're looking to continue a rebuild or start a rebuild and look towards the 2025 class. I think this is a perfect way to do it on both sides. It's kind of like that perfect, like you said, rebuild versus contending trade where both sides are in opposite directions and the trade works out perfectly well and even for both sides, and it just fits everybody's direction. So, I mean, if I had to pick a side, I would take the Jared Goff and Travis Kelce side. But like you said, like getting Flowers for Kelce, I think is fantastic right now. I think it's hard to trade away Travis Kelce because he's 34 years old. He's coming off of a quote unquote down year, a down Kelce year, I should say. And yeah, getting a first and second for Goff. And I did look, this team's first is probably going to be late. So that may not
you
be the most
assume it
ideal.
would have to be like at least mid to go and trade for a quarterback at the tight end. Like
they also still have, you know, Anthony Richardson and London and Metcalf and Puka.
Ooh, I like that
and ETN. You know, so like it's a strong team that was kind of like, let me go out and get like a really good QB2 to start competing, and I'll mortgage my 25 first, and that'll work out.
Beautiful decision. I think that worked out really well. So both of you, congratulations on a great trade, and both of you, I hate you for making me be indecisive. Well, I'm always indecisive, but like I like to be able to pick a side I would choose, but this one's really good. Next one, I'm very curious to hear your ideas on this one. It's a 25 first for Will Levis and Christian Watson. A 25 first is 275. Will Levis is 113. Technically, he's 112.8. I rounded up to be nice. And then Christian Watson is 105.8 for a total of 218.6. So a 25 first is technically worth more than Will Levis and Christian Watson. Now, I know I said I wanted to hear what you say, but I need to, like, my stream of conscience just kept going, so I'm going to keep talking. Like, I can't imagine selling Will Levis for less than a 25 first right now.
Yes.
I'm not the biggest Will Levis fan. I like aspects of his game. I love his sense of humor as a human being, which always helps for me a little bit. But the Titans are putting pieces around him to succeed. And it's going to be a different offense from what we saw last year. So it's going to be something that will hopefully, assuming rational coaching, which is never a great thing to assume, but like it'll be a little based around his skill set and talents. And again, if you have to have a quarterback who's willing to just kind of close his eyes and chuck the ball, it might as well be to DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley. Like, those are two very good wide receivers. You know, so like, and come on, Treylon Burks, just keep your roster spot. I really hate these articles that are coming out right now.
He can't even make the team, dude. He's on the freaking
go somewhere else and get a new start. You need to, like, for any hope whatsoever. But like in a super flex league, Will Levis, you definitely feel better if he's your QB3. But like, I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility that he becomes a solid mid maybe even high end QB2 if with enough volume. Like he has the big play ability in him and the wide receivers to put up the big plays. So yeah, the accuracy and the decision making and the hits he takes, they're all exactly like, that's why he's not worth more than this. But like, I'm pretty out on Christian Watson at this point, but like I don't think I still will sell Will Levis for less than a first, which is what this is clearly. Like, Christian Watson isn't a throw-in, even if I am out on him.
Right. I do think it's interesting to see that the 25 first is over 2x Will Levis's value.
You're right.
I don't know if that's like just like a super flex ADP thing or something. I mean, he's buried down in there. This is one quarterback ADP. He was still quarterback 28 in May, one quarterback ADP. In super flex ADP, he's 26 now. So yeah,
I think I'd take him earlier than that for sure.
I think I would too. Especially so like that 25 first, I looked up the team. Obviously, it works in two different ways. That 25 first is late. So I would, if you're a team that wants to take the gamble dice roll on a guy like Will Levis as probably more often your QB3, I'm willing to do that, especially with next year's quarterback class not looking phenomenally. Yes. And with all the way that the basically the room is set up for Will Levis to succeed. Yeah. Like they've set him up well. And I actually looked up, I saw a tweet, I just refound the tweet from Pat Thorman, tweeted out that the Titans neutral pass situation neutral situation pass rate under Mike Vrabel since 2018 was the second lowest in the NFL. The Bengals' neutral situation pass rate with Brian Callahan since 2019 is the second highest. So it's like a complete
Now,
180.
don't expect that for Tennessee right away, but like hopefully it at least works its way to the middle, right? Like,
I mean, the two of those, well, 1.5 of those years was with Andy Dalton, and then they drafted Burrow in 2020, but then he got hurt halfway through. So 1.5 of those years are not Joe Burrow years with Callahan too, you know? So
yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like, and I do think
all the extra weapons.
Yeah.
Tony Pollard is great out of the backfield, and Christian Watson, like you said, is not a nothing piece either. Like, there is hope for him coming back. Like he said that he's working on
that was an interesting
figuring
read.
out why his hamstring hasn't been doing well, and his strength differentials between his thighs. Like, it's like
so interesting.
It's crazy, all the science that went into that whole entire thing. So I mean, there, like, Watson is definitely the highest upside player on that team from the receiver core.
Yes. While I do love Reed and like Wicks, Christian Watson, we've seen has that big play upside and big scoring upside.
Right. So, like I said, that 25 first being late, I think I would take the dice roll on both these two guys. And especially that 25 first in this specific situation is not that team's 25 first. He got it somehow else. So if you just have like an extra first round pick and you still have another one and you want to take the shot on Levis and Watson, that if at least one of them hits, you probably can regain that first round pick. If both of them hit, you're probably winning pretty big. Like, you might have 4x your value on that this time next year if both hit. So I think I'm willing to take the gamble.
All right, let's move on to running backs. Very curious to see if you're going to make me pick a running back over a future draft pick. 12-team super flex, and right away you hit for my heartstrings. 25 first for DeAndre Swift and Rashad Bateman. Man, the offseason and Rashad Bateman are just trying to hurt me. But I fool me 5 times, shame on me. Fool me 6 times.
Fool me 5 times.
25 first, 275. DeAndre Swift, 169. Rashad Bateman, 33.3 for a total of 202. I don't like. I feel like we live in a world where DeAndre Swift should be worth a 25 first. I don't think that's really real though. Like, if he's on my team, I'm probably not selling him for less than the value of a first. But if you're going to tell me just throw in Rashad Bateman and then we'll get the deal done, I would do it. So, like, this feels fine. And I wouldn't send a 25 first for DeAndre Swift right now.
No.
Like, there feels like there's no reason to do it. A, it's June. B, it's June. C, it's a running back and it's June. Like, I don't think Swift can come out and do what he did week 2 in Philly last year, and his price will barely go up. That's how just out on DeAndre Swift everyone really, really is. Like, you could probably get this exact trade done, maybe just without Rashad Bateman, if he goes nuts and gets 20-something points in week 1. Like, I don't – people will see that as a way to get rid of him. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to send a first for DeAndre Swift, regardless of my Swift love, and believing that he will be good in Chicago.
If someone offered me a 2025 first for DeAndre Swift, I would take it instantly. Just like, he is in that range of running backs that I just really don't care about production wise, because they're all the same, And I feel like you could just, even if you're competing and you're like, oh, DeAndre Swift is my RB2 and I'm competing, and if I trade him for a first, then I'm not going to have that. But I feel like you could just turn around and trade like a 2nd round pick for Aaron Jones, like it's so easy to make up Swift's production at much cheaper prices that you just have to cash out on Swift at a 1st round pick. And like you said, like, I am not, if you need a running back and you're like, oh, let me use this 2025 first to get a running back, that running back should not be DeAndre Swift. You should be aiming higher. You should honestly probably be waiting until the actual regular season, like you said. Don't do that now. But you should be aiming higher with the 2025 first than DeAndre Swift. If not, even like I said, probably a better advice would be just go get somebody that's older, but still similarly productive, but cheaper. And that would probably be the better option. So this is first round pick for sure.
Next trade is 12-team, 1 quarterback, a 25 first for David Montgomery and a 25 second.
And I think it was week 10 on. They both played every single game together in tandem. Gibbs broke out because he was getting a lot more volume post bye week as well too. Monty was still producing as like a solid high end RB2 during those weeks. I'm trying to find the tweet to see if I had it in here.
Montgomery's only 26. Thought he would have been older. He was 2019, and I guess Swift was 2020, so that's the 1 year difference in their age. But yeah, he's younger than I would have thought.
But Monty and Gibbs shared pretty well, and over I think those final 7 or 8 games, I think Monty outscored Gibbs 4 times. I think over the course of those weeks, if I remember correctly. So they were pretty back to back, and you get the upside that if Gibbs were to miss any time, Monty at like a 100% workload in that backfield is bonkers, So I really do like buying into David Montgomery. I think that he does offer very safe RB2 weeks, especially because, there's so much touchdown equity, and he is like the goal line guy, essentially. Like Gibbs will get opportunities for sure, but like if they really need to pound it in, it's going to be David Montgomery. So I like buying in, and I like the upside that if Gibbs were to get hurt, Monty could go absolutely nuclear as like a top 5 guy those weeks.
Yeah, but how many spaces in a draft are you willing to give up for David Montgomery? That's what this is. Assuming it's not the same teams, you're not going back 12 spots. How many spots is David Montgomery worth to you?
Honestly, I think that he's worth a full round. If this were to somehow mathematically be, the 112 and the 212. Yeah. But if it's, even if you're doing this as a playoff team to get another RB2 for sure. So hopefully that is a playoff first next year. So if this is even the 108 and the 210, I still feel like that's kind of a win just to have the shot to be able to have Monty on a championship roster. Because if it is the 112 and that second is like the 205, that's more than worth it. You won and you got a minimal drop back,
Yeah.
And it's a 1 quarterback league.
Yeah. Of course, the reality is no matter what number of spots we say, we have no idea where these picks are. You're absolutely right on that. But
right. I'd do this.
I just think there's better things you can do with the first. Now, you're right. Like what you said about in the last trade is there's plenty of things you can do with a 25 second to get your team if something were to go wrong, to fix your team if something were to go wrong.
Right.
But why hamstring your value by getting rid of your first for getting someone that's okay?
That I don't disagree with. And the timing of it as well, too, doing it now, I absolutely don't disagree with, questioning why you would make this move now.
Yeah.
But I do think that this is a better trade than the DeAndre Swift trade because I think Monty has the same floor and maybe a higher ceiling in the Lions offense than Swift. And the second is obviously a much better asset than Rashad Bateman right now.
Yeah, because it more or less is what you said before. You're kind of spending less to get the running back because you're getting something more back with the running back. All right, so let's get on to wide receivers where I'm definitely going to need to. You're going to make me make decisions, and I don't like it. Hold on, I'm going to need to hydrate for this.
Here, we'll prepare.
12-team, 1 quarterback, a 25 first straight up for George Pickens. A 25 first is 307, and George Pickens is 281.5. So, Steelers fan, 25 first or George Pickens?
George Pickens. Yep.
Yeah, regardless of what I think Pickens is worth, this is his value. The idea of Deontay being gone, I really like Roman Wilson, not going to lie. But like if my first is going to be late, I think George Pickens shows what enough upside on a good enough team with a much better quarterback situation than they had last year that I don't think a mid to late first in this coming year will have more upside than Pickens right now. So you're taking the upside now versus the upside later. And again, assuming everything works out and your team is good and makes the playoffs, which is always a little bit of a gamble. But like, if this is my playoff first, I think I do this if I really just feel like getting that young wide receiver. Because again, he's 23. Like, there's going to be wide receivers coming in older than him.
Right. There is an argument, I think, that Pickens is just as good of an asset to have as a 25 first right now, regardless of the direction of your team. If you're competing, you can get the potential breakout points of George Pickens as the wide receiver one in the offense with a better quarterback situation. I mean, we saw what he could do as the wide receiver one when Deontay missed time last year. It was amazing. You know, like it was like 16 fantasy points per game. So there's that upside, but then there's also, you know, if that's a one quarterback 2025 first, so you're already decreasing some of the value, especially if that ends up being a playoff 25 first, you know, you're definitely not getting the shot on any of like the top 3 wide receivers next year, or really potentially the top 2 or 3 running backs next year. So that basically takes away the cream of the crop for next year's class, and then to where it really just becomes easier to just say, I want George Pickens then. Because I mean, like, there are really good wide receivers next year. Like, Luther Burden is fantastic. He would have been a top 3 receiver in this year's class. Evan Stewart, you got McMillan out of Arizona. Mika Egbuka is going to come out next year because he stayed at Ohio State. You have 4 really good wide receivers next year that, if all goes well, I'd probably rather have all 4 of them than George Pickens. But if this is a late first round pick, you're not going to get any of those 4 guys. The running back class is looking pretty strong too. So maybe you look at the running backs, but I feel like I would rather just have George Pickens in a vast majority of leagues than a 2025 first, a mid to late 2025 first.
Yeah. In May, Superflex ADP, George Pickens is wide receiver 28. Like, I think it's a very realistic situation that he raises that, in which case his value goes up, in which case you get more value for him if you felt like moving him later. Not to mention the points you would get along the way if you wanted them for the season while he's doing it. So yeah, I'll take Pickens over the 25 first. Next, 12-team super flex. 25 first, Josh Jacobs, and a 25 second for Tyreek Hill. 25 first, 275, Josh Jacobs, 221. A second is 88 for a total of 584. Tyreek Hill by himself, 537. So we have the 3-for-1. You're overpaying a little bit, like just a little less than that 25 than that second. So you're really not. You're 3-for-1ing. But I also get this because Tyreek Hill being 30 already, even though who cares?
I do not care at all, dude.
About his age. Like, even if he even if you want to make the joke that Tyreek Hill slows down a bit, he's still faster than everyone else, except for maybe Xavier Worthy.
Yes. And like a 25% regression, even a 30% regression on what he did last year is still like 1,500 yards and double-digit touchdowns.
Right. Now, don't get me wrong. Again, and this is super flex, so we will be able to throw probably a quarterback or 2 into everything that what Addison was just saying about the 25 firsts for next year. Josh Jacobs in Green Bay came out, and we pretty much said that Josh Jacobs could carry everything, but we like to platoon our guys. So Josh Jacobs, I don't think will get the volume that he did in Vegas, but he's better than anything else they have in that running back room. AJ Dillon, they've shown, is not it. So like, I do think you're going to get good points out of Jacobs, which is why I like this trade, because it's hard to get value for Tyreek Hill in non-point scoring season, because there's nothing sexy about having Tyreek Hill on your roster when he's not scoring points.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with Josh Jacobs, but so I like you're replacing the points of Tyreek Hill, clearly not all of them, because Tyreek Hill was like the 3rd highest scoring player last year. But you're replacing a decent amount of his points and getting a first and second where you could do whatever you need to do with your team, because like, I don't think you get Josh Jacobs if you're rebuilding, because he's still not an easy flip to a competing team. Like, you'd probably be lucky to get 2 seconds for him. Like, you're not getting a first for Josh Jacobs anymore. Like, so if you're rebuilding, and we always say you don't want running backs if you're rebuilding, but the truth is you want any asset that will increase in value and you can flip for more than you paid for it. I don't think this is the situation like that with Josh Jacobs. So, like, if in this situation I'm competing and I want to get rid of Tyreek Hill for some reason, I really like this trade. If you flip it around, I would probably pretty easily pay this to get Tyreek Hill and make that splash player in my lineup, especially if you're starting like 9 or 8 players. If I have to choose, I do think I choose Jacobs in the picks.
Interesting. Because I think if I had to choose, I just want Tyreek Hill.
Get it. And that might even be the right answer. But the more I kept talking, the more I'm like, I really do like that I'm going to walk away with 200 plus points out of Josh Jacobs. Like, I don't, like, that's to me pretty much a given, even if he does have a pretty decent committee on his hands. Like, you're walking away with at least an RB2. And that's great. And then you get a first and second to, again, do whatever you need with. Like, I mean, I've seen trades where Tyreek Hill goes for a first and a second. Like, not to mention that you can go and spend that first and second on Devontae Adams and Amari Cooper and just fill your lineup with point scorers if you felt like it. Like, I think the versatility plus the points of the pick and the player in this situation is worth more than, well, Tyreek Hill can just break fantasy football again if you felt like it.
I don't disagree with that. I do like from that aspect, you do have a ton of versatility. And who knows, maybe you can in season trade away Josh Jacobs for another 2025 first. So then the net total for this would basically be Tyreek for 2 firsts and a second.
That'd be great. Yeah.
That works out. Cause I really, really like Josh Jacobs. Like, if I were to do like redraft rankings for this year, he'd probably end up being a top 5 fantasy running back for me. I don't really care about the whole platoon thing. We keep bringing that up, that it's always been a committee, but like the first year that LaFleur came into Green Bay was the year that Aaron Jones saw 285 touches. And the following year then had 250 touches in 14 games played and has had massive efficiency on those touches, averaging anywhere from 4.5 to 5.5 yards per carry and an additional like 7.5 to 10 yards per reception. Like that is what Aaron Jones did at the same age that Josh Jacobs is right now in a LaFleur offense. I just like, even the drop in overall volume, that's what Josh Jacobs had to have in Vegas because that team sucked. So in order to score fantasy points and do well, he had to have that volume. And now he doesn't necessarily have to rely on that volume because the team's that much better. It's more efficient. He's going to have more touchdown opportunity. And if he were to still have 275, 280 plus touches overall, with a decent portion of them being 40 to 50, 55 receptions, like that is still going to be, a easy top 10 fantasy running back if he can stay healthy. So I do understand that argument. I really, really like Josh Jacobs, but I also really, really like Tyreek. This dude has averaged over 20 fantasy points per game in each of the past 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that stops at all.
When he chooses for it to stop.
It literally. And that's probably some of it's coming into this here because he's talked about retiring at the end of 2026.
Yeah, but now he's asking for an extension. Well, last year he said he wants to retire at the end of the 25 season, but now he's looking for an extension. So
when he sees that somebody like Justin Jefferson's making almost $40 million a year, I'm sure Tyreek would continue playing if he's getting $40 million a year, So, I mean, if Tyreek goes, into age 33, age 34 season, he could very easily just continue being elite.
Yeah.
I think I just want
Tyreek. Play to elite ages. And all right, so let's move on to nothing. That's the end. Okay, because there is one more position, and so there's no tight ends on this list. But I'm curious in a super flex league, because that's what at least that's what I mostly play. What tight ends, realistically, would you send a 25 first for? Now, of course, you'd send a 25 first for Laporta, but that's not getting done.
I'm not going to answer the realistic one. I'm just going to give you every single tight end that I would trade a 2025 first for right now if the offer were to present itself. Laporta, McBride, Bowers, Pitts, Kincaid, Andrews, Hawkinson. This is not in any sort of rankings. This is just as the names pop up in my head.
I mean, you mostly got the top 10 for May's ADP, but okay.
That might be it. I think situationally would depend on if I trade that first for Kelsey. You might not even need to pay first.
Once you hit in season, you'll probably have to.
Yes, and I'd probably be willing to do it. But I don't think I'd do it for anybody else after that.
I'll give 3 names, even though I don't. I'm starting to lose faith in one of them, though. Team situation, who knows? There's David Njoku, Evan Engram, and George Kittle. I love me some Evan Engram, but I've also seen that you don't have to pay a first for him, which makes me super happy because I still love that guy. I'm a little worried about Njoku, though I do really like the player. Like, it's really weird when his worst stats came with the actual starting quarterback, as opposed to everyone else who played. And again, they weren't bad, but they weren't great. And George Kittle, he disappeared last year. And the games he did well, he survived on 2 catches for 2 yards and 2 touchdowns, which was a legit stat line.
I mean, he was the only tight end last year with over 1,000 yards.
But also, man, it looks like Ayuk and Debo can be gone at this point,
or at least one of them.
With them just extending Christian McCaffrey the way they did. Like, they probably can't afford Ayuk at this point with what money he wants.
Right.
So, like, so maybe Kittle does get more of that volume, and we know he's talented, but like, I don't think you need to pay a first for him.
No, I don't think so. But that is the saving grace for Kittle, is that it seems more than likely that one of the receivers is gone, which would open up the target share. Because I don't think you can just slot in Ricky Pearsall into receiving the volume of either one of those two guys. So some of it would come back over to George Kittle until Pearsall, if he ever is ready to take that step into that role to the fullest extent.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, that is the end of our 25 first show for the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ Fisher, Dynasty Outhouse, Addison Hayes, @AmazeHayes_. We'll catch you next time.